Hi, I'm Dave,
I'm Buddy.
and welcome to our 8-part series on unpacking reactivity and technically leash aggression. So, the idea of this series is to be able to assist people who are either working remote and don't have access to a local trainer in their area. It should give you enough information to be able to work out a base program. Our advice is to always find a local trainer to partner with to help you assist you in person with these issues. But this will also be a great, valuable resource for anybody who is technically working on this issue in the community. We've also done a lot of short form, reel type videos in the past on this subject. We wanted to do something that was longer form and also catalogued in a space where you could easily access it. So it will be sitting in a playlist, its own playlist on YouTube, and we'll make it easily accessible across all of our platforms. We'll probably be releasing round one of the series each week for the next 8 weeks. But we certainly hope you find this very, very valuable. If you know of people also that are struggling with this issue, please do us a favor and share it.
We'll be giving away a few of our famous beefy balls each episode. So we'll give away 2 each episode, but for the first one, we'll do 6. And Dave has come up with this game. I'll have a hidden word that's going to be somewhere in this episode. The first episode, that word will be 3 times. I don't know where he came up with these words. Don't blame me. That's him. But yeah, so I'll be saying those. If you can please comment on the Instagram or whatever post you're looking at. Comment the exact time that I say it. There'll be 3 different times, and we'll send you 2 beefy balls. We'll get in touch. Ball and string is usually quite our favorite toy, so it'll be good to get these in your toolbox.
Episode 1, what is the secret word?
The secret word is bumfuzzle. That does not count. Don't put the timestamp on that one. It has to be in conversation. Bumfuzzle.
That's a stupid word.
It's a stupid word.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get rolling. What are we talking about today?
Reactivity. This is a fun one because you and I don't particularly like the term reactivity, but define it.
Okay. So I always do this in my workshops. I always ask the attendees to define it. So it's a really strange term that has been made very, very popular. But interesting enough, reactivity from a psychologist's perspective is a human that is very, very light sensitive. So not many of our dogs really fit into that category. In terms of reactivity, it's used as a really broad umbrella term to essentially describe any dogs that blow up on lead, specifically on lead. And we will talk about the separation between on lead and off lead in a little bit. But it's important to note that it doesn't really tell you much. And I like to call it a lazy dog trainer's term.
It's a catch-all. It's definitely like an umbrella catch-all for a lot of different things.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the reason I call it a lazy dog trainer's term is because it's not that hard to dig a little bit deeper. So if we see a dog that's blowing up on lead, then typically there's key drivers of that. So an emotion drives behavior, and determining what the emotion is can be tricky. And we've certainly both had dogs periodically where we probably chat about them, a client's dog, and we can struggle a little bit to define it. However, most dogs, it's not that difficult to define why that dog is blowing up. For example, a dog wants to get to other dogs because that dog values dogs extremely highly. The dog's very frustrated. You've got a working dog on lead. The dog sees a little white fluffy dog in the distance. It explodes because it wants to chase that. That dog is prey driven. A dog is very fearful of other dogs. It might explode because it's fearful. And the other example I also like to use is that we would never... I've got young children in a 2-year-old in daycare currently, and we'll often see those kids interacting and playing with each other. Now, I've walked into the room many times and seen sometimes my son grabbing a toy off another child or not getting access to a toy and then blowing up. We would never call a child reactive. That would be a very strange thing to call a child. You would immediately say that child is being pretty possessive. He wants those toys. He doesn't want to give those up. He doesn't know. You would break it down to a level that had a far greater amount of understanding. So it's very much, I think, a lazy dog trainer's term. However, we do need to use it as a topic, and that's why it's a topic in this conversation, because people now see that as the umbrella for all of these issues.
I've thought of it like I like to learn and teach in analogies, and I thought about like if you're teaching someone English and they go, "What's that?" and you go, "That's a building." And they go to another place, "What's that?" You go, "That's a building." That's a building. Like, yes, you're not lying to them, you're right, that is a building, but one's a school, one's a fire department, one's a grocery store, one's a house. Yeah, they're all buildings, but they're all very, very different. They all serve very different purposes. So yeah, I just think it's a catch-all term, but what is it? Is it aggression? To you, is it aggression?
And that's the catch, isn't it? So aggression has become almost...
Most people would default that it's aggression, yes? Would you agree? In your experience, most pet dog clients that come to us automatically tend to classify it as aggression.
Look, I think there's probably two categories of clients. So yes, some do. And then I think there's another category of people in the community today, not to their fault of their own, but just because of, I guess, community trends and how people feel, is that they don't want to define it as aggression at all costs. It is reactivity, not aggression.
Yeah.
And I think that's
softer.
So it's almost like people don't want to label their dog because they're concerned about the consequences of labeling their dog as being aggressive. But we don't. Ultimately, I think that the next part of this conversation needs to be, and this sounds strange, but we really need to normalize aggression. So aggression is a normal trait in all mammalian species and most species in the world. So I think it's really, really important to understand that aggression is not just biting or punching someone in the face. Aggression can also be very subtle things. Aggression can be used on the sports field. So there's a positive form of aggression. High-level athletes all use aggression in their game. When we're playing with our dogs, we expect them to express that. Aggression can be things like just being still or rigid. It can be direct eye contact, snarling, growling, snapping, biting. There's a whole range of things that fall under that umbrella. So technically, if your dog's frustrated, even though its desire is to get to another dog and that wants to go play with that dog, when it's on lead, it's actually getting aggressive. It's frustrated, it's angry that it wants to get, and a lot of dogs will actually redirect and bite because they can't get to other dogs.
Can you fix it?
You're asking the questions I normally ask. So at the workshop, and that's a really, really good question, because that's the other part of it, is that people often want to, or they're looking for a fix or an answer for these issues. So one of the things we talk about a lot is that concept of people coming and really wanting an answer for a problem. Whereas most of what we do is about development. So developing the whole dog. But going back to that question, specifically, can we fix it? No. And the reason you can't fix aggression, so aggression is a behavior that's displayed, is because it's driven by an emotion. And can you ever guarantee, so we can absolutely minimize it, but can you guarantee, if an animal's practiced a behavior before and that behavior was driven by an emotion, can you guarantee that emotion is never going to come again? And is it fair to expect a mammal to not display aggression if they're in an extreme defensive situation? So if Buddy ran up to me and shoved me into the wall, am I expected to just acquiesce to that? Or is it okay for me to push him back and create space and then boot out of there because he's a big, strong dude and I'm weak and getting old? Is that okay? It should always be okay.
I think it's one of those, I think a part of this is one, you're exactly right. I think a lot of people come in and they go, and I did this too when I first started training. I was like, hey, can we fix this? And I think the big thing is usually that is a symptom, it's not necessarily the problem. And so people want to go, hey, let's just attack this right away. And we go, hey, now there's a lot of work that we got to do on the other end to do this, to start. And that's why we're so big on our foundations, our markers, and all that. And I think the other thing that people like to do is put all dogs in one box, where they think like the golden retriever real friendly, and everyone kind of wants to have that sort of dog. But no different than people. You're going to get a spectrum of people that have patience for a lot of stuff and people that have patience for very little. And yes, you can move and you can teach this is the acceptable behavior in this circumstance, but you're right. find a way that we can ever be like, you can't bum fuzzle around anymore, and that's not allowed. Or we can't completely change it to where the dog never feels that way again. And yeah, I agree with that. I just think a lot of people come trying to put something in a box that might not necessarily fit.
Yeah.
But it seems to be happening more. A lot of this, like, and
what?
And how long? So you've been in the animal trade for ages. You've been training dogs for a long time. Do you see this as a rising trend in the past 5 to 10 years? Is it more now than it was when you started Pro Dog, for example?
It's definitely become a stronger focus, and that really brings us to, I think, a really key point as well. And there's a lot of things that we're going to hit up over this whole series, but we can't funnel it all into one session. But I guess that brings us to the next point of, what is creating this and why has it become such a strong focus? And probably the main driver of this in recent times has been this extreme focus in still a lot of generic puppy programs to socialize young puppies with other high adrenaline fueled young pups. So it's still, and a lot of people in the community feel like it's the most important thing to do in the early stages. It's a very, very strong focus of people who maybe haven't had dogs before or haven't experienced this issue before, is, we've got to socialize our pup, almost thinking that that's going to avoid this issue. And what ends up happening is that we put extreme value in other dogs, and then when your dog can't access those dogs, it gets wildly frustrated. So frustration is probably the main thing we see, but there's all sorts of expressions of that on lead. So that is probably where the trend has come from. Now, whether that's a spike in recent years or not, I don't know, but I definitely feel like the trend has been upwards, and it feels like it's more and more of our work, but it certainly has been since we opened the facility 8 years ago. I feel like that it's been fairly constant, but yeah, there probably has been a spike.
This is anecdotal, but for me as a trainer, it feels like I get as many or more over socialized dogs that come in rather than under socializing is a problem, but I don't think people realize that over socializing is a massive thing too. And you, like you said, we let puppies go play with each other, then the arousal goes through the roof because literally there's no adult in the room to sort of monitor it, and then now all of a sudden, we got a problem because dogs are the best thing ever. So I think it's important for people to realize that how powerful over socializing can be as well.
And this is a key point, is that we're not saying do not get your dog around other dogs. It's just far more intelligent to do that with older, more mature dogs, or just have a single playmate or a younger playmate that your dog socializes with. But you don't want your dog to have this generalized understanding that all dogs mean extreme fun, because a lot of dogs don't. A lot of the dogs in the community are dangerous. And if your young dog runs up to the wrong dog, and I had it happen to me this morning at the park, I was able to put Raya in a drop, and this very happy dog that thinks everyone loves it ran up to Raya and actually stole her ball from right in front of her, and then ran 60 meters with the ball that way. I kept Raya in a down and went and got the ball, came back, and we carried on our business. These things obviously happen, but if that dog ran up to the wrong dog and stole the wrong dog's toy, that could mean extreme issues for that person. So we're not saying do not socialize your dog, but as a general rule, we really want to focus on developing more value in the handler, because a lot of programs these days that are really designed to diminish value in the handler create extreme value in the environment. And as a result of that, the handler has no value. When your dog's blowing up on lead, a big part of modifying this, you idiot, modifying this is really shifting that value back, so you can actually communicate with your dog and do something of higher value with your dog. And the thing that we always come back to in all of our programs is having really, really strong markers, really, really strong reward systems. You can't even start this work without these things in place, and learning how to play with your dog. So that play session that your dog has with another dog, you should be able to equal or better that in terms of your own play with your dog. We will be hitting these subjects further on in the series, but we're just trying to give you a bit of a broad overview today. But all of these things are creating a bigger issue, and this is why we're seeing a greater number of dogs with this problem.
The dogs too that have we like our working dogs too. It seems that the dogs that have a bit of go, those are the dogs that tend to lose traction a little bit earlier too, because they have so much drive for everything, whether it's drive for toys, drive for food. That social drive can be just as high when you teach them that. So then all of a sudden they get in quite a bit of a bumfuzzle when they can't go over and see something. So especially if you are a working dog person, it's very sort of important to kind of guide those dogs through this sort of stuff.
I've done about, I think, maybe 17 or 18 leash aggression reactivity workshops.
Have you done that many?
Yes, a lot.
Damn, okay.
I've been doing them for about,
You've been trying to retire. I'm like, I'm not doing them anymore.
I think for 5 years I've been doing them, and and probably about close to three to 4 years. So yes, a lot. And I was actually going to stop doing it a while back, but realised there was such a need for it. And I do enjoy it. But one of the things, because you made a really good point there, one of the things I always see as a trend, I don't ask to see the dog spots before I arrive. I like the surprise on the day of seeing what turns up, and then just working with what we see in front of us. I think that's really, really important in terms of dog training. That takes us into another topic. We'll maybe deal with that later. But what I can always guarantee is out of, let's say, the 6 or 8 dog spots, at least half, if not 2/3, are always working.
A Kelpie,
dogs.
a German Shepherd, or something. Yeah.
And the reason is the motor or the engine in this dog is far greater than some other animals. So these animals have been bred to work and chase and work with a lot of energy and heart. And as a result, is they're whatever they do in life, they're going to do at 120%. Nothing comes in at 50 or 60%. So if we don't channel that prey or whatever the main driver is in that dog into something fun and an activity with us or a sport, there are lots of positive outlets for this type of thing that don't involve high adrenaline play with other dogs that ultimately becomes quite dangerous. If we don't channel that early on, then the dog doesn't know where to put it, and often we see it express itself in this form.
Yeah. And how many times do you get people going, "Oh, dog's fine off lead, totally fine off lead," and then gets on lead and becomes an absolute banshee?
Yeah, huge difference. The really perfect example of that, I think, is our day. We run a daycare program. It's quite structured, run by trainers, and there are a significant amount of dogs within our daycare program that if they crossed over on lead on a tight lead in reception, we can almost guarantee they would blow up and potentially fight. Off lead, they can be in the daycare pen all day,
hang out for 8 hours straight.
Guarantee there'll be no issue around that. So the lead is an accelerator of behaviour, or it decelerates pending use of. And as this series go on, we'll be targeting and discussing that topic very specifically. But understanding how much the leash can affect your dog's behaviour is huge. So many dogs in society, if they're off lead, I'm not suggesting you do that by any means unless you have an extremely highly trained dog. But if your dogs are off lead, you're probably going to see a much smaller percentage of this. However, there are dogs, regardless of off lead and on lead, they will want to cause harm. That's a different thing. So when we're running through this series, we're very much talking about on lead. This is an on lead discussion. We do set the curriculum for off lead, for us at least, is completely different. And it's approached in a very, very different manner. This is very much focused on lead work. And you can do all the things you need to do on lead. Like playing with your dog can be done on a lead. It requires a level of coordination, but you can absolutely do what you need to do on a lead. So most of the behavior mod stuff that we're going to be promoting, it can all be done on short, like a 6-foot lead or a long line.
It's funny that like a lot of the stuff we do with puppies, where we start maybe using a lead and a harness, and we start doing some restrained recalls where we start calling the dog, like, come back, come on, and let the dog sort of pull into, whether they pull into a harness or something like that. We can teach a lot of drive through the lead, whether it be for toys, for the recall, and we do this intentionally so we can get these really powerful desires to come back to the hand, that we can get this really powerful desire to get to a leather rag. And I think we do this quite well with dogs intentionally, and I think a lot of people unintentionally do this quite well, going around where they build a ton of drive because the dog's hammering at the end of the harness, and all of a sudden they just go into this giant bumfuzzle, and we have a super tight lead on the dog, and they're going, man, I'm pissed, I want to get to what's going on there. So the same way we do it intentionally, I think some pet dog people are excellent at doing it unintentionally. So just lead mechanics and stuff, and we'll keep putting videos up on our Instagram. Lead mechanics are such an important contributor to how, in my opinion, and to how these dogs actually react on lead.
I think that's huge. Yeah, that's absolutely, it's a really, really good point. The other point I guess we probably just need to mention today is that what qualifies us to talk about this. So
why listen to you?
One of the benefits I had early days was I had access to dogs. So we're now training academy at the moment, but we've got another facility nearby here, which is a structured dog daycare program, and within that we've got about 35 dogs a day, and certain dogs are approved by their client for training purposes, and obviously we'll take significant precautions, but from early days I had access to quite a few dogs. So and we had a dedicated training space to be able to work on this. So certainly through the first few years of having the business and to date, we've just had a huge volume of dogs come through here, and having that ability to flip dogs out is really important. So what we typically find is if we often use our own dogs, and that's if people are going to, or my trainers are going to be doing this work within the business, the expectation is that there's a willingness to utilize their own dogs to a degree.
Yeah, it's important.
And that there's a level of integrity in that, but that's also very important because people want to be able to essentially test and see how their dogs are going around other dogs. Now, one of the problems is we can get a dog very comfortable with another dog, sometimes within 2-3 sessions. So Buddy brings Huck in, using Huck for a session. The benefits of that are limited because the dog will become quite fine with that dog in a fairly short period of time. So that's kind of one factor to it. So you do need to be able to switch dogs out, and obviously some dogs do react more to specific types of dogs. So having different types of dogs you can flip in and out makes it important.
In that space too. That dog in that specific space.
Yeah. And our program's not about being 100 meters away and stepping in a meter at a time when your dog gives you eye contact. We actually want to get the dogs reasonably close quickly. And the way we were working in the other facility, you don't have that ability to get a long way away. So we were looking at ways to really supercharge the process, speed it up within reason, because this process does take time and changing emotion takes time. But we've come up, and the way we started doing this is vastly different to what we're talking about now. So the way it was done at the start, I would look at it now and think it was quite clumsy, and there were key errors that I was doing that was slowing the process down. It wasn't awful, but it's a long way from where we are today. So anyway, that's why we are talking about this with you.
So we got 7 more parts coming up. Yes, that equals 8. And so the next thing we're going to talk about, probably how to structure a program. So we're going to go into a little bit more nuts and bolts, what's required, timeframes, things like that, of sort of what to expect when implementing this program, which will be quite useful.
Cool. All right.
All right.
See you
next
one.
episode.